This is Voice of Korea.
This is Voice of Korea. Dear listeners, now welcome to English language service of Voice of Korea from Pyongyang, the capital of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. We present the immortal revolutionary piano, Song of General Kim Il-sung.
The training, which is scheduled in less than a month's time. Chung said he believes that changes can be made at Seoul's will. With less than a week before Washington's 25% reciprocal tariff takes effect on goods shipped from South Korea, the Seoul government has put forth a package of private investment and public financial support to benefit the U.S. shipbuilding industry. It's been dubbed Make American Shipbuilding Great Again. Ki Yoo-sun reports.
South Korea has proposed a shipbuilding project worth tens of trillions of won amid last-ditch efforts to avoid Washington's 25% reciprocal tariff. According to multiple sources on Monday, Minister of Trade, Industry and Energy Kim Jong-wan put forth the idea on Friday during talks with U.S. Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick at the latter's residence in New York. The envisioned project has been called Make American Shipbuilding Great Again, and it got its name from U.S. President Donald Trump's political slogan, Make America Great Again. It would consist of investments in the U.S. from South Korean shipbuilders and financial support from Seoul in the form of loans and guarantees to be provided by the Export-Import Bank of Korea and the Korea Trade Insurance Corporation. Before Kim left for the U.S., South Korea's top three shipbuilders, HD Hyundai, Hana Ocean, and Samsung Heavy Industries, reportedly submitted plans for personnel training, technology transfer, and the reinforcement of equipment and material supply chains designed for shipbuilding on U.S. soil. Lutnick reportedly expressed satisfaction with the proposed package, and South Korea's world-leading shipbuilders are expected to provide leverage in the ongoing negotiations as the U.S. ultimately seeks to revive its shipbuilding industry. According to a report from the Korea Trade Investment Promotion Agency, the American shipbuilding industry began to decline in the 2000s, resulting in the number of shipyards falling from around 400 to just 21, with annual production averaging between 3 and 5 vessels. Seoul, for its part, is seeking to differentiate itself from Tokyo, which succeeded in lowering its tariff from 25% to 15% with a major investment package. Instead, South Korean negotiators are highlighting a potential technological and industrial alliance in line with Trump's goal of resuscitating America's manufacturing sector. Ki Yoo-sun, KBS World Radio News.
The Lee Jae-myung administration is seeking to dispatch additional diplomatic and trade officials to 50 U.S. states over the next 5 years. peaceful walk, but it's good we have this opportunity to celebrate Salam along with New Zealand.
And world news, in another sign of closer ties between Russia and North Korea, the first passenger flight between the two countries in 3 decades has taken off. Russian media say the 8-hour journey between Moscow and Pyongyang is sold out. The BBC's Steve Rosenberg linked to the flight's check-in.
I'm at Moscow Airport, witnessing what the Russian authorities are calling a historic event. Flight N46107 between Moscow and Pyongyang. The first direct flight between the capitals of Russia and North Korea since the fall of the Soviet Union. A sign of the strengthening ties between these two countries, political, economic, and military ties. And North Korea has been sending soldiers to fight alongside the Russian army. To begin with, it'll be just one flight a month.
The Yemen's Houthi movement says it will now target any ships owned by companies that do business with Israeli ports, regardless of the ship's nationality or destination. The warning marks what the Houthis call the fourth phase of their campaign against Israel. In a televised statement, a military spokesperson urged countries to pressure Israel to end its war in Gaza. In sport, Solomon Islands national women's football team captain Eileen Peggy has joined the Mombasa women's team in the Fiji's football competition. The 33-year-old striker led the Solomon Islanders to win the OFC Women's Nations Cup 2 weekends ago in Silver. On Sunday, she turned up for Mombasa and scored a goal in the team's 3-0 win over Rewa. Peggy is expected to join the national side again for the upcoming Melanesian Cup tournament in November. And former All Blacks lock and Highlanders assistant coach Tom Donnelly is joining the Wallabies coaching staff for the Rugby Championship, which kicks off next month. That's your latest news and sport for RNZ Pacific. You can read more on our website, rnz.co.nz/Pacific. Lover, this is Pacific Wave from RNZ Pacific. I'm Savannah Suzuki.
メールはまだ立っています。
アメリカのトランプ大統領は EU ヨーロッパ連合のフォンデアライエン委員長と会談し、来月1日からカットしていた 30% の関税を 15% にすることで合意しました。
そして EU に続きアメリカと中国との交渉が28日スウェーデンのストックホルムで行われます。合意に至るのでしょうか。
イギリス北部スコットランドを訪問しているトランプ大統領は27日 EU のフォンデアライエン委員長と EU への関税措置をめぐり会談しました。会談後2人は揃って記者団の取材に応じました。トランプ大統領は
We are agreeing 自動車などあらゆるものへの関税を 15% にすることで合意した。これまでで最大の取引だ。ありがとう。
ただ鉄鋼製品とアルミニウムの関税は 50% のままで変わらないとしています。
一方 EU はアメリカから7500億ドル相当のエネルギーを購入することやアメリカに新たに6000億ドルの投資を行うことなどを約束したということです。フォンデアライエン委員長です。世界最大の2つの経済圏の間で合意に至った安定と予測可能性をもたらすものでお互いのビジネスにとって非常に重要なことだ。山崎さん、トランプ政権との関係
参加者各国都为波比在其于球体朝鲜战胜历史的胜利传统效益的大建设，美国解放战争。 Sudah mungkin juga mungkin kebiasaan tidur kawan sebelum kita semakin terkejut.
动物的这个它幼崽呢，能长活到50%来讲呢，已经是相当不错的了。就是说目前这个50%的这样的一个成活率啊，就是说呢，和那俄罗斯的一些记录呢，也都基本上是一致的。它的这个从幼崽的这个从它的成活率来说呢，我们呢可以呢就是说来分析它为什么成活率是一个这样的情况因为呢野生东北虎的它幼崽啊，在刚出生的时候它是十分脆弱的，就是说呢一个呢就是说如果当地的这个猎物。就是说，猎物的种群的数量或者是密度如果不够的话呢，这个母虎的这个它的奶水呢，就可能供应不上，就这个是导致呢，就是说这个幼虎的这个它的身体很弱，可能是呢保证其中的就是说4个里头是有2个能够很好的那个存活下来，也很不错了。还有一个第2个方面呢，就是快递的质量。
entering the United States are not further growth higher than many European countries wanted, but much lower than the 30% that was threatened by Donald Trump. Many EU nations have been hoping for a 0% tariff. On top of that, we also know there will be some exceptions. Pharmaceuticals will not entirely be part of that 15% tariff. And still, coming from the European Union will tax at a 50% rate. Here's some of the reaction that we heard earlier on after that bill's announcement, both Donald Trump and Ursula von der Leyen. Yes, I think you were saying this is probably the biggest deal ever reached in any capacity, still at the end show. It's a giant deal with lots of countries.
Today's deal creates certainty in uncertain times. It delivers stability and predictability for citizens of businesses on both sides of the Atlantic. We have stabilized on a single 15% tariff rate for the vast majority of EU exports. This rate applies across most sectors, including cars, semiconductors, pharmaceuticals. This 15% includes savings for no stacking, all inclusive. Much needed tariff across citizens and businesses, and this is absolutely crucial.
And the European Union has made a whole range of commitments, including the purchase, using Donald Trump's words, hundreds of billions of dollars of US military equipment. The European Union also making $600 billion worth of investments in the United States, and they say they will borrow $750 billion in US energy over the next 3 years during the remainder of Donald Trump's term. The Thomas Network, who was instrumental in these talks, has celebrated on social media by saying that President Trump just unlocked one of the biggest economies in the world and it was a historic wave in strengthening the relationship between the US and the EU. That's in the Carter report. The senior European lawmaker says trade agreement between the EU and the US would deal with its slant. Bernd Lange, the chair of the European Parliament Committee on International Trade, described the proposed framework as unsatisfactory and significantly imbalanced. The lawmaker warned that it could undermine the EU's economic stability and job security. Many countries are also divided over the deal's impact. Germany and Italy think the deal averted the trade war. Spain and France are concerned about the impact on critical industries and domestic energy autonomy.
Certainly better than the 30% that was being counted if no agreement was reached by August 1st. Ursula von der Leyen says it is simply the best deal they could get.
That was William Denslow in Brussels. China and the U.S. are holding a new round of trade talks in Sweden starting Monday. Chinese Vice Chair He Feng and U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent are holding negotiations for the 3rd time this year. The meeting is seen as an important indicator of what comes next for both sides, with Washington's pause on additional tariffs to end next month. Li Jianhua reports from Stockholm.
Delegations from the world's 2 largest economies are meeting once again, this time in Stockholm, to work towards a broader agreement on trade and other issues. Sweden is recognized as politically neutral and maintains strong economic ties with both China and the United States. So how did we get here? The breakthrough came in Geneva back in mid-May when both sides agreed to a 90-day pause on tariffs, a major de-escalation after months of tit-for-tat measures. Levies imposed on each other dropped.
各地の明日の予報です。関東地方南部は晴れでしょう。
こちらは NHK ワールドラジオ日本 NHK の国際放送です。次の短波での日本語放送は日本時間の午前0時からです。午前0時からの日本語放送は東南アジア向けの 11.815MHz です。繰り返します。午前0時からの日本語放送は東南アジア向けの 11.815MHz です。こちらは NHK ワールドラジオ日本 NHK の国際放送です。AI のアナウンスでお伝えしました。
Glad to be with us on this edition of NHK Newsline. I'm Raja Pradhan with the news from Tokyo.
Thank you.